Have you ever wondered, what are feelings? They are this pesky, unreliable, subjective experience that we have, and yet at the same time they are also important. But why do we have them? And what exactly are they? Now imagine a scenario where I go into a shop and I want to buy a cake. I see the cake and I buy it, and how will I feel? Well, you already know the answer to that. I will feel quite satisfied with that, quite happy. But how do you know that? That is the question. Similarly, if I wanted to buy a cake, I went to the shop, but it wasn't there, you'd probably immediately know that I would be quite dissatisfied with that. I would be quite sad, perhaps. And you'd be right, and everybody seems to agree with that. So where's this objectivity within feelings coming from? The Catholic theology of the soul will be very useful in trying to answer this question. First of all, the soul has consciousness, or traditionally known as the intellect, and free will. What consciousness does is it takes an image of what is out there, and that image flows towards our mind. It's an image from the object towards the subject. Now, the will is the opposite of that. The will is an image formed within the subject, within me. For example, I can try to imagine eating a cake, and then that image from my will, from the subject, flows towards the object. For example, when I try to go and eat the cake. So consciousness and free will are basically the same thing. They are the movement of an image either from the object to the subject or from the subject to the object. Together they help us to reshape the world. I see something, I change it, now I see something different, I change it a little bit again, and so on. Now, here's where emotions come from. Here is what I see through my consciousness, here is what I want through my will. If they match, if the two images match, then I will feel satisfied. If they don't match, then I will feel sad, dissatisfied, maybe angry. All these feelings come from the difference between what I see and what I want to see. So what feelings effectively are is another type of perception. I can see through my eyes, I can hear with my ears, I can smell with my nose, and I can feel through my feelings. It's just another type of information. Therefore, feelings cannot really be good or bad, they're only positive or negative. That's where the objectivity comes from. It comes from the fact that if you know what somebody wants, and you know what situation they're in, what they see, then you can predict how they will feel. And we need this, because without this, we would be completely unable to understand each other. But we obviously do understand each other. And so why is it that sometimes one person feels one way and another person feels another way? Well, that will be because either when they are looking at the same thing, they are actually seeing something different, meaning I could be looking at a chocolate cake, but maybe think that it's actually a turd or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, that's one way. It's people are not actually perceiving the same thing. So the objective reality is out there, but the perception could be faulty. Now, from the other side, we have free will. So even if two people see the exact same thing and are in the exact same situation, if they have different goals in mind, then they will feel differently about it. Somebody who doesn't want a cake will not feel the same way as I will, because I do want the cake. So these two things will determine the differences between people. But if two people can see the same thing and want the same thing, then we can be pretty certain that they will have the same experience. This is also quite useful if you want to try to deduce what you actually want. What we want is not always obvious even to ourselves. So if I look at what I actually see and I can see what I feel, then I can infer what I actually wanted from this situation. And I think we can do this not just with us, but also with other people, and that's exactly what we do. This is what we do when we try to infer somebody's motivations. We see the situation they are in, we see how they react to that situation, and from these two, we infer what they actually wanted to achieve. Unfortunately, way too many people confuse feelings with the will. They think that if something is positive, then you have to do it, and if something is negative, then you have to avoid doing it. And that's nothing more than hedonism. This is not something that you have to do, and you know this because every time you get up to work, you don't want to get up to work, but you do this anyway. A useful distinction between feelings and the will is, for example, fear. You can feel fear, but that doesn't mean you have to run away. You could be courageous or you could be a coward. And these two things are dependent on the will, on how you react to the feeling. But the feeling itself is nothing more than information. It doesn't tell you what you ought to do, just what is. So feelings are basically a kind of feedback for us so that we know whether we get what we want or not. Now, the reason why there's a disconnect between doing something and feeling something completely different may be because you have two different values. You want to go to work to earn money. You value money. You want to stay in bed because you feel tired. But you value money more than you feel tired. And that's why you get up to go to work. Well, what's the problem with hedonism? Well, if you try to follow your emotions, what will generally happen is you will do things that are not good for you in the future. You will value things that are less valuable than other things. And as a result of that, you will cause more suffering for yourself, not now, but in the future. For example, you may feel that it's a great idea to drink on a Sunday night, but then when it comes to going to work on Monday, you will deeply regret it. Emotions are very useful information, and they do have this objectivity to them, and that is what I would call the emotion space. Even if I don't feel the same thing as you do when we watch the same object or the same scenario, or listen to the same music, we both know what happy means, we both know what sad means. All these emotions are there and accessible to us, and not just us, but even animals. We can see when an animal is angry or happy or sad. That is noticeable to all of us, and that is objective. What is subjective is our will, what we want. Or, on the other hand, another thing that could be subjective is what we think we see, if we don't actually see the true reality that is in front of us. It's wrong to dismiss emotions as completely subjective and useless, because they are not. They are very useful and they tell us about our inner workings. They tell us whether the image from our consciousness and the image from our will are lying or not. Now, that's my take. What about you? What do you think about it? What are emotions? Do you agree with what I said? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments. And if you like this video, please consider subscribing.